So we've looked at some of the market drivers being the theft problem and the accident problem. And potentially telematics could be the answer to some of these problems. I'm going to focus on the embedded type of telematics first, but I want to look at the infrastructure and to identify what type of partners are required to implement telematics in China, focusing in three areas: the mobile network operator, the dispatcher and TSP, the telematics service provider, and the call center. And for each one of these, I will look at what is the key requirements for making a good telematics service, and what is the situation in China compared to Europe or some other areas around the world. So in Europe, mobile network operators have identified telematics as an important growth area for their business. So Europe, probably like Japan, the market for mobile phones is completely saturated, and there's very little growth for gaining new customers for the normal voice services. So the network operators have identified machine-to-machine communication, M2M, as a potential growth area for them. And they have started to implement some special features in their network for how to make a good solution for telematics. One of these features is, by understanding the automotive production process, they will provide a SIM card to go into the DCM, which is provided in an active state. And this means that the DCM can be tested on the production line at the DCM manufacturer's plant. The vehicle can be tested in the car factory, and potentially if the car is being imported from Japan, the vehicle can be tested whenever it arrives in Europe and comes off the boat. But from a business point of view, maybe the vehicle manufacturer doesn't get any revenue until the dealer sells the car. So the network operators, they understand this process, and basically they are saying that they will provide all of this testing for free, and they will only invoice the vehicle manufacturer when the vehicle is sold. So you would not get this kind of functionality with a normal SIM card. This has been a specific solution developed for telematics. A second area that the network operators in Europe are looking at is how can they guarantee or have as high performance as possible for the telematics messages through their networks. And I think it's well known that with the billions of SMSs that are being sent by mobile phone users to other mobile phone users, very often there can be a delay in the SMS being transferred through the network, and sometimes even the SMS is lost completely. And this would be a disaster for a telematics system, especially if it was an e-call. So what the network operators have done is they have dedicated infrastructure for machine-to-machine communication and telematics. So it means if the DCM sends out an e-call message, there is a very high service level agreement to get that SMS through to the telematics service provider using dedicated infrastructure. The third area is that the network operators are trying to give as much control and access to either the vehicle manufacturers or the TSPs for the SIM cards that are fitted in DCMs. And they do this through a portal that the TSP can access over an internet connection with various APIs. And it means that the TSP, the telematics service provider, can inquire about the status of the SIM cards that they are controlling. They can activate them, they can deactivate them, they can do some diagnostics. So it's given, the network operators are giving the TSP and vehicle manufacturer a lot of visibility about what is happening within their networks. So this is kind of best practice that is emerging in Europe and maybe in some other regions around the world. But at the minute in China, we believe that this kind of functionality is not yet available. In China, the mobile phone networks are still trying to build their coverage, and they still have a lot of opportunities to win customers for the normal voice and data services. So they do not have such a strong focus on M2M and telematics. So we think that there's still some way to go before the Chinese network operators can deliver the same kind of functionality and performance as we're getting in other regions around the world. If we look at the three network operators in China, China Mobile, China Unicom, and China Telecom, they went through a kind of reorganization in terms of their networks and the technologies that they support at the end of last year. And now, two of the network operators are supporting GSM as 2G services and one CDMA. But it starts to get a little bit more interesting when we look at the 3G technologies, and we see China Telecom has CDMA 2000, China Unicom WCDMA, European-based technology, and China Mobile has been awarded or been given the China domestic 3G technology. At the minute, most telematics services don't need 3G. They're typically voice, maybe some SMS, and a little bit of data. But if we're going to be planning, if we're going to be selecting a partner for the long term, we need to have an image of what type of 3G technology they will have and they can support. And we can make some natural fits between vehicle manufacturers from Europe might well be attracted to go to work with China Unicom because it's similar technology that they will be deploying in Europe. And the same for the Japanese and the American vehicle manufacturers might be attracted to China Telecom because they're used to dealing with CDMA technology. So I think the biggest challenge for the network operators in China will be China Mobile with the proprietary or the China-only 3G technology. So I think we need to understand not just where the network operators are currently, but what is their plans for the future before selecting the appropriate network operator for telematics in China. So after the message gets through the network and it arrives at the TSP, the telematics service provider, we heard previously that Toyota is doing this in-house through a daughter company called Beijing Media Technical Solution. And it's a similar situation for Shanghai GM. They have their OnStar in-house division who will host the data center for their telematics services in China. And one of the reasons that the database has to be in China is because of the government restrictions on the digital map for China not being allowed to be taken out of China. So across Europe and America and other regions, it's possible to host and operate telematics services maybe from the US when you're delivering the services in Europe. But in China, we need to have a local data center for providing the services to the vehicles that are in China. Looking a little bit further ahead in the next couple of years, I mentioned that we believe that Hyundai could be one of the next manufacturers to launch telematics. And they seem to be working quite closely with some of their partners from South Korea. So SK Telecom and SK Energy have made a joint venture in China called Navjoy. And they will be, we understand, supporting Hyundai with the telematics data center for their services in China. A couple of other TSPs that are very interested and active in China, Wireless Car from Sweden, they have an office in Beijing, and they've demonstrated a B-call service to a number of vehicle manufacturers and hardware suppliers earlier this year. And ATX announced a couple of years ago that they had a partnership with SK Telecom to jointly develop telematic services in China. But you can see that SK Telecom is now working with SK Energy. So we have to wait and see, I think, just to see what ATX's plans are for China.